I absolutely hate painting with white. Out of every color I've had the pleasure or displeasure of working with, white is the one that makes me feel the most frustrated and angry to work with. I get all set and ready to paint a masterpiece of a miniature only to see as part of the paint scheme that I need to use white. And I know that yellow is the color most people say is the worst to paint, but from my experience painting an Andean army, it isn't that bad. Difficult? Sure, absolutely, and when I paint the spots where the blue and yellow touch, I have to paint it like 3 times over to stop it from getting green, but at least I understand what's happening there and why if I mess up, the end result looks like the way it does, like ass. Enter the color white, another paint that's hard to use, but I feel it gets undersold just how goddamn difficult it is to paint with. First off, I just cannot comprehend how to make it the consistency I want it to be. Maybe it's just my smooth ape brain, but I just cannot get it right. Sometimes I make sure it's nice and thinned down and put like a minute straight into testing the consistency multiple times to make sure it's ideal, then go to use what I think is something entirely thinned down and it's like I just poured it straight out of the paint holder and onto the mini. Other times I barely bother thinning it down at all because I'm angry and want to just be done with it by this point, and it's like I put the brush through Chinese water torture for an hour straight. There's nothing but a thin, watery layer of paint that immediately gets brushed away if I look at it too hard. Either way, every time I use white, without fault, it ends up looking chunky and gross, and it's just awful. Second issue is that every time I use it, even if the stars align and I am actually able to get it looking nice, without fail, it fucks up the other paints I'm working with. Either it smears all over the place, because again, the consistency of the paint is without exaggeration actually worse than Hitler, or because it just doesn't work and ends up streaking the paint and ruining the progress made so far. And the real kicker is that none of this would piss me off so much if painting the color white on a miniature actually used just white paint, but no, that's too logical and easy and makes sense. Instead you need 50 different shades of grayish paint layered on top of each other and carefully edge highlighted and washed to make something look white, because white paint by itself just looks like shit. And the last thing is entirely unrelated to miniature painting, but I have a tattoo that has a decent amount of white used for it, and by far the worst part of the process was getting it colored white, because what happened was the white parts had to be done over and over to make sure the color actually stuck out on my skin. White paint is so shitty that it was probably under the needle for probably an extra hour. It's all was said and done because the man just had to keep going over it to make sure it actually showed up. I mean, I get I have skin so pale I could call aid for Gondor, but it's still annoying, you know? Fuck you, white paint, on behalf of my mediocre painting skills and my arm.